Joe, you all set?
Yes, sir.
Okay, with it being after 7 o'clock, we'll call the November 4th meeting, to order. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not live anyways.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is approval of minutes from November 7th. They've been read and reviewed. Look for a motion.
October 7th, right?
Yep.
I move that we accept the minutes as drafted and reviewed.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next order of business is a small project, NACC number 163, 315 Candlestick Road.
So, the small projects were reviewed by Heidi, but this is a patio that will be 55 feet approximately from the wetland. The reason for the design is that it's going to be kidney-shaped. It's sort of more of a free-form patio, not a square. I originally saw it and said, what happened to the ruler? But it was done that way purposefully. So it meets the small project F. I believe there's a little bit, there's a description in the in your packets. And Heidi recommends a pre and post construction and a sock for erosion control.
Any questions, Joe?
Anyone here for this project?
Yeah,
Okay, I can,
sure.
just in case they have any questions.
Any questions, Joe?
I don't have any. I'm all set.
Jack?
Heidi's verified that the site is flat and that there's no grade changes at all required for the patio?
She did come out to site and confirm that, yes.
No photos with it?
She didn't give me any,
Okay.
so.
All right, I take her word for it. I'm good.
Yep. The only question I have is when they go out to, you're gonna remeasure anyways, because it can't be more than 300.
Right, Heidi will do the pre-construction. You'll have to lay it out on the ground in some way that she can confirm the size.
Sure.
No question. Motion?
I move that we consider NACC number 163, a section 4.4 subsection F, small project, and that we approve the project as proposed with post-construction and
Pre and post.
pre- and post-construction inspections and installation of straw wattle type erosion control.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. You're all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next one is NACC 164, 203 Katuah Street.
Is anyone here for Katuitt? I think this one's gonna continue. Heidi, it's a deck and the proposal is right at the 50, so she requested that they get a delineation to make sure there's no, you know, oops in the proposal, I guess would be the easy way to say it.
Do you have a motion? Continue to the next meeting?
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous.
is that in the above ground?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Next one is,
Just on that one, shame on me for looking through it. So we have the deck, and it is right on the 50, let's say.
The pool is
But it
not there.
separates, but the pool's no longer there. That answers my question. Thank you.
okay, next one is NACC 165, 155 Boston Street.
So, I don't know why this one's not coming up. Well, you guys have the the plan in your packets. This is, the septic system is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, but the existing tank is under the deck and needs to be crushed, compacted, filled, loamed, and seeded. I don't know why that one's not working, but, this is the plan for the septic. You can see the little circle under the deck is where the work will take place. So she recommends, again, erosion control, SOC, pre and post construction inspection, and on this one she recommends wetland markers. Oh, actually, she recommended wetland markers on the last one, if you want to revise that motion as well.
Any questions, Joe?
So the existing tank is under the existing porch. So they're gonna demolish, they're gonna abandon the tank as they normally would. Are they gonna have to demolish the
She said they
porch and
could,
put it back?
they could do it on, it's under a deck, I think, not a porch.
So they can get to it without actually having to take anything
That's
apart?
what she said, yeah.
Okay, well said.
Jack?
Yeah, and they can do it without removing the porch or deck. I have no more questions.
Eb? No questions. Todd?
No question.
Motion?
So this one is an L,
Yeah.
and it would be for erosion control, pre and post, and markers.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. I know we didn't do that right, but that's close enough. RDA for 660 Great Pond Road.
So at the last hearing, you had asked, I think we got through the gravel parking lot. I don't think there were any questions about that, but the planning board had asked for a berm. That has since been taken out of the plan and a sort of stormwater planting area added. I'm sure Maureen can explain that better.
Good evening, my name is Maureen Harold with North Environmental Services. So at the last hearing, as Jen mentioned, we showed a berm to try and collect some of the runoff from the proposed walkway. Most of the commission members frowned on that idea. So rather than create a berm, Jennifer was able to work with planning, and we came up with the idea of proposing some plantings. So on the left-hand side of your plan, you see a planting list for shrubs as well as ground cover. And that will go west of the existing parking area drive. In addition to that, one of the commission members was concerned about the waiver request for the walkway. You may remember the walkway is originally proposed 23 feet from the wetland. They asked that we shift that outside of the 25 foot, which we've done. So now we're proposing at 36.6 feet from the wetland.
Okay. Joe, any questions?
None.
I have no questions.
Deb?
No, I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for accommodating the committee.
Sure.
Doug?
No question.
Motion?
So this would be a negative number 3 for work in the buffer zone and a positive number 2 because we did approve the wetland delineation that North Environmental did. And then the conditions would be for pre and post construction inspections and the installation of erosion controls as shown on the plans.
Like I said, Jim, let me know when they're gonna do that, when they do the pre-construction for that gravel parking lot.
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one is 242 1662 Zero High Street West, 0 West High Street.
So our last discussion focused largely on the stormwater swale that's at the site. I think I emailed this all to you, but since that time, Wetlands Preservation Inc. has done some research on the swale and put together some aerial photos from back in the day. I don't know if you want to run through the...
Yes, I'm David Steinberg from RCG LLC, representing the owner, RCG West Mill NA LLC. I'm here with Seth Zarin from RCG and Kurt Young from Wetlands Preservation Inc. As we left off last time we were before you, and we had shown the site, which is broadly the area of detail there, where we had delineated wetlands. There was some discussion over are not including the swale, the stormwater swale, at the edge of the ball fields. On that plan, we've spent a couple weeks researching what the history of it was to confirm that it wasn't part of a resource area previously, or shouldn't be now. Seth and Kirk can take us through the slides, I think. As we see the aerial history, it'll clarify our reasoning on why we we're treating it as a stormwater management swale, and we'd like to continue to be able to use that as a stormwater management area.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. Seth Zarin with RCG. So let's stay on that first photo for a second. What we did is we went back to air photos that we both collected for our historic tax credit filings and other historic filings, as well as air photos that were present in the state's Oliver database, to try to pin down the history of changes across the back of this site. Unfortunately, there's not the best record that one might want for what's happened back here, but we've tried to piece together all the pieces that we can find, both from the Conservation Commission files and also from the available air photo record. So this first photograph is dated 1951, and what I've done here is highlighted both the area of detail, which is the area that the other photos will all zoom in on, which is the particular area of interest for our filing. But in this photo, I wanted to highlight the path of the Cochicuit Brook, because I know one of the questions had been in the previous meeting was about whether the original railroad right-of-way followed the brook, and actually at one point it had. As we've discovered through other work on utility easements and the old railroad right-of-way, it was actually relocated to this black line location in the early 20th century. But originally it actually bent down closer to the river path, and that was the old configuration. It was relocated up here by Davis and Ferber to clear some additional area for their operations, and that was sort of the area of operation through the 20th century. So if we can take the next slide. This zooms in. This is still the 1952, 1951 air photo, and highlighting a few sort of key areas. There's the Stevens Mill on your left, the Davis and Ferber Mill to the south, High Street kind of bending up along the right, the railroad cutting across there, what we think was an agricultural area or a field, a hill, a meadow, something of that nature, to the top of the image. Can you go to the next page, please? And then can you scroll up a tiny bit? I think this was up, sorry. Other way, yeah. Keep going. 1971, that's right. So in 1971, again, similar condition to what you found in 1952, with the field to the top, a railroad, the Stevens Mill, and the Davis and Ferber Mill. And if we go to the next page, so the big change happened. So there's a little description of kind of what's been happening from the 1900s up until the 1980s. And in the 1980s, this mill site was converted from a manufacturing use to an office and industrial park. At that time, there were a lot of changes to the site, including the addition of a surface parking lot, softball playing field, and early stormwater management features in this particular area of the site. So if we can scroll on to the next image. So originally, this is sort of the swale that was constructed. So this is a false color image, so red is green. And there's a large surface parking lot that was constructed, and a drainage ditch, as it's described actually on the wetlands filings from a few years later that goes actually across the property line into the Stevens Mill and peters out to the left of that yellow highlighted area. And the outfall actually leads to a number of catch basins in the parking lot area and the loading dock area. So if we go to the next page, please. So this is a scan of a plan from 1987. It was a resource, the plan is titled Resource Area. It's a full-size plan. It's on record in the conservation files. That plan shows both sides of the street, and the only area that's highlighted, including the softball playing field, the swale, et cetera, that is highlighted as a resource area is the area of the pond that's on the East Mill side of the property, from which we take the interpretation that at the time there was not an indication that this particular area of the site was then a resource. It was then considered a resource area. It wasn't then considered a wetland, and that it was a drainage ditch, swale, whatever you want to call it, and actually is labeled both ditch and swale, coming off of that parking lot and sort of petering out into the distance. Can we go to the next page, please? At some point over the late 1980s to early 1990s, there was a dispute, we think, well, and Kurt has a little bit more of the history on this, but essentially that the drainage ditch as originally designed was not managing the stormwater sufficiently, and that there was flooding ending up on either the Osgood Mill site or the what is now the Clean Harbors site to the sort of upper left of this image, kind of coming off that end. And what was done is that the swale was lengthened and straightened, right? So the original swale was kind of a wandering line. Here you can see that the swale has been totally straightened. It's also about, at this point, you start to notice, at least from the air photo, that it appears that this is when the ball field begins to start getting wet. This is why we came, of course, originally to get a wetlands delineation line for the ball field area, which, though it may not have originally been a wetland, has certainly become one over the past few decades, particularly around the edges, and that may have been the consequence of the original earthwork up there. So if we can go to the next slide. So again, this is sort of a description of what's happened, that in 87 there was not an indication that this was considered a resource area. It was not connecting to a resource area at that time, and that in the intervening time between 1985 and 1995, that the ditch and swale was straightened and enlarged and maintained so as to manage a runoff coming either down the hill or off the parking lots that was ending up in other areas. Go to the next slide, please. And here you see 2001. The swale continues to be present. It's actually, if we go to the next page, by 2008, the swale is beginning to become sort of braided. It's probably because it's silting in. It's no longer functioning as well as a stormwater conveyance, moving water away from the site. And so in 2000, if we go to the next page, in 2011-12, somewhere between 2008 and 2011, the outfall was actually moved over something on the order of 100 feet, 50 to 100 feet to the upper left. And it was again straightened and cleaned out again so that it would function as a stormwater conveyance. And as you can see through these air photos, that the area of wetland vegetation and the area of wetland soils has migrated down with the wetness of the ball field, and by this point, it's the wetlands have crept into the end of the swale. If we go down to the next slide, 2013-14, you can see basically the present condition, which is this continually maintained swale that is connected to the parking lots and to our stormwater drainage and management facilities. And since we acquired the property in 2013, we've continued to maintain it, mow it, and so forth. And if we go to the next slide, in the last couple of years, we've also had to do a little bit of work. I guess we'll go one more then. We've had to do a little bit more work on our own catch basins. We had to replace a pump in a catch basin that moved water out of the loading dock area. We've also recently installed deep sump catch basins in our catch basins to better manage silt going into the stormwater area. And we've also installed hoods in those catch basins to help manage grease and oil and water infiltration to the stormwater system. If we can get the next page, Jen, that'd be great too. Thank you. So this gives you a little map, a zoom in on the parking lot area, showing some of the catch basins, manholes, and other systems that operate in the area. So This view has sort of been rotated 90 degrees clockwise, but there is catch basins and a pump in the loading dock area, which pumps up to a catch basin in the center of the lot. There's also a catch basin in the small visitor lot by the old Converse building. Those connect to a manhole, and then that manhole sends a long pipe out to the outfall that goes into the swale. We also observed a connection which we believe connects to the street. It wasn't possible to fully camera that from the angle that we had, but there does appear to be some additional connection, water pipe coming in and bringing water that direction that we were not able to determine the exact origin, but it did seem to line up with a catch basin in the street. DPW suggested that, well, obviously it's not standard practice. That's the kind of thing that would occasionally have happened in the 1980s when this was all originally constructed. There may have been a tie-in that was brought into that area. So we go to the next slide, please. So this, again, summarizes the work that we've done since RCG acquired the property and began managing it. We've replaced a failing pump in Dock D. In the Dock D area, we've also replaced catch basins with deep sump, hooded catch basins to improve the operations of our stormwater system. We've continued to mow it. And is there a next slide? Is there another one? And this gives a sort of overall summary of the functionality or the system that's operating here. So the blue line is the water moving in pipes from catch basins, pumps, and so forth through our site out to the swale, which is the yellow double line, which carries the water away from the site, manages our stormwater, allows it to infiltrate naturally. And the green line on the top is approximately the boundary of the wetlands delineation that we originally came to discuss with you. So I believe that's all of the slides that we have here tonight. And now Kurt and I are happy to answer any questions you have about this history that we can answer. Kurt has a few other items he could probably add to as we go through it, and we'll hopefully go from there.
Thank you. Joe?
That was fabulous research. I mean, really, really good job. And that's what we were hoping to be able to get and understand. I mean, mill complexes are always difficult to deal with to begin with, but sometimes they keep good records as well. So, thank you for doing that. So what we have now is a clear understanding of how the swale functions, what its hydraulic principles are, inherent to it, and then how it connects into a broader resource area system. The green line that you're showing up there, though, let me ask you, and it's simply a line, but I'm ignorant. Is the wet area
Above,
outside the ball field? It's in the outfield area.
The
outfield area. Okay. So the thought is that I guess there's no argument that the swale that's beyond the green line is resource. And we're still going to discuss on what we've heard tonight, that yellow line between where it leaves the pipe and crosses that line.
correct, yeah.
What we had, Joe, was the area that's outside of the green line that you see there is important vegetated wetland. There's a stream channel associated with it, so we give it that notation. Basically, the field that the ball field was in, that became occupied with a ball field, was an agricultural field, as Seth indicated, and I actually documented that by a resident from the local condominium association called me up and said, gee, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing, and I have some history you might be interested in. And he was a long-term resident of North Andover, he's a long-term resident, and indicated that the field had been used for grazing of animals when he was a kid, so clearly agricultural use. It was a field that was graded down to hard pan, so they at some point took soil off of that and took it right down to a hard pan soil, which ended up being a hydric soil in many locations. And that's why, over time, it gravitated to being a hydric soil condition. Not too many wetland plants, but there are a number of wetland plants in that outfield area. So the BVW area is pretty well, we're comfortable with in the sense of the technical delineation of that. The yellow line, interestingly enough, I was involved with an incident in 1988, and I think Al Manzi may be the only person, I don't know when you joined.
Not back to 88.
But I think Al may have been involved
Early 90s.
in that time frame. But the Northeast Solvent facility was where Clean Harbors was, or is now, and an individual built a berm to protect the condominium facility from getting the water that was stormwater that was typically draining towards them, and diverted the water down towards Northeast Solvents, right through their back door, out the front door. It was a mess. So Mel Wiener, at the time the owner of Northeast Solvents, and some of the other association people down there were a number of commercial facilities down there that were being affected, basically took a backhoe up and dug a deep ditch that diverted all of that flow that was heading towards them and put it down through their property into the pond more directly, which may have been where it went originally before that water was diverted the way it was. But anyways, it was diverted. At that same time, I think late 88, early 89, we filed a request for determination of applicability, and the railroad ditches, they were termed at that point, both on Mel Wiener's property and the mill property at that time, were considered non-jurisdictional ditches, okay, drainage structures, not jurisdictional under the local or state wetlands protection regulations. And I think we provided Jennifer a copy of that request for determination from our files that we had. So, and I'm pretty sure Al was involved in that. The commission certainly was deeply involved. To this day, what happens is that water flows down through the yellow line swale and then drops into this ditch structure and then down to the pond. I think it's more stabilized at this point than it has been in the past, but it certainly was a significant trench that was put in there to divert that flow. And so that's sort of the genesis of it. But in that area, it's not vegetated or does not have a hydric soil where that ditch was dug, because that's all upland down there, always was upland. So that's from a genesis standpoint. That's where that most significant change in the drainage pattern was made in that area.
But that's also off of our particular parcel. I think
It is.
He's just trying to explain the full sort of water channel.
Yeah.
Our objective, and our intention has been, since we purchased the property, and we believe the intention of the previous owners as well, was that this is an essential piece of stormwater management that helps manage the water flowing off of parking lots, resulting in better management of stormwater flow and water quality, and that our desire is to be able to continue to operate fully functional stormwater facilities on our property, whether it's exactly this swale or a slightly modified swale or an improved swale, as we continue to improve the systems that we already have in place, that we would like to be able to continue to do that in this area of the site.
And that will add that was the full intent of DEP when they made the regulatory change last year to exempt these areas from jurisdiction, so that in fact, as history moves on, we can improve those stormwater management systems by new technology that is developed and take care of some of the old issues that are out there. And I think that's what the intent of West Mill right now is to be able to have flexibility in dealing with this area.
The problem is they only exempted structures designed or
From a date
upgraded
forward.
under the stormwater management policy or the stormwater management standards that they were later incorporated.
Or improved.
More maintained.
So I think, if you look at the wording on that section, it was,
But they have to have been maintained or improved in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act.
and I think the difficulty here is that it was clear to everybody who was dealing with it, I believe, that they were non-jurisdictional, and I think that's you could quibble about that, but I think that realistically, the wetland area, the water emanating from this doesn't emanate from a resource area itself, like street drainage, parking lot drainage. It's not what you would typically have as a stream resource area.
I'm just gonna say, it's not a, long conduit of bypass to Kachikawick Brook. It's not that.
No,
It's
right,
not
right,
that.
right. You don't have a large marsh area above it. So if you look at the wetlands protection regulations, typically wouldn't define a stream unless it emanated from a resource area, by definition.
I'm all set for now.
Jack?
The yellow section of the swale on the image that's up there now, where does that end up? Where does it discharge to?
If you can go, Jennifer, to the later slides, maybe
Up a little bit.
2000.
A couple more.
Perhaps.
The only, I think The
One
one
more, maybe.
before this, no, one more.
Kind of, I mean, ultimately.
can
There
see
you are,
this-
right
Right,
there.
that's the best one, yeah.
Okay, so unfortunately, apparently this screen diverts my, my pointer. I don't know who I'm hitting in the face with it, but anyways, at the,
You might be able to see it best, Jack, behind me. There's another swale beyond the swale.
That's the ditch that was dug in the
So,
80s.
the outlet is currently approximately in this location, and that flows right down here, right through this sort of a vegetated area here. It used to go into Northeast Solvents when I was doing it in 1988, but this is the lineation on the site plans that you can see, where the ditch was installed. So that currently picks up this flow, diverts it down through upland area, down to the pond.
So let's talk about the, I'm sorry, I know it was your turn. So prior to digging the ditch and putting it into the pond, it was actually flowing across the flattest area, which was paved parking lot, and maybe even gravel at that, back in that area.
Actually, the course of it was more down into the condominium facility, and then it sort of.
This condom, not,
Yeah.
No, this one here.
not the
If we
Laidlaw
go,
condom.
can we,
All right.
Right.
can we go up a few to like the
It was pretty
1980s?
amorphous at that point.
One more.
I don't think we ever saw any outlet, and it may have been because you have very good soils in that area infiltrating.
Right. So you can see actually, originally it
See where
bent
it
to the
dips
left,
down?
and if you scroll one down or two down to the plan, that one, the plan, it actually crosses our parcel boundary into the condo and sort of peters out. And then I think they were less than best pleased about that, and then put a berm up to push it the other way. And then it ended up on the Northeast Solvents land too.
Okay, so that ditch that was dug subsequent to that plan, is that a maintained area?
That's not on our
It's
property.
non-jurisdictional, it's not actually in the buffer zone. Well, maybe the tail end of it is, but I haven't looked at that plan for a
That,
long time.
And not going back to 88, but that was heavily eroded in the early 90s. It used to, I think it saw some flashy flows that scoured out the,
In
in the dug
channels
portion,
down
in the
here.
dug portion,
Yeah.
from what I remember.
It was always, I was describing to Jennifer, about yay wide and literally about that deep on a sandy soil. And it did some trapping and accumulation of sediments because of its design. And at some point, it may have been eroded, and I will be the first one to say, Joe, I did not go back and check that earlier this year. Jeff Andrews was doing the
I'm talking
delineation.
way back. There was problems with erosion down that area.
88, there were problems with erosion because there were a couple of blowouts in the 89 time period. And we were putting up erosion controls on a number of occasions below that dug ditch.
There's some enforcement orders on the file.
Are there?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, again, those are features that happen off our site. We certainly understand that the water is ultimately conveyed to the pond, and we want to maintain this as a functional conveyance so that water is treated, that flows are managed, that there isn't flooding onto neighboring properties, and that we have a functional stormwater system, as it's currently functions and as we'd like it to continue to function, or at least improve it as we go forward.
So what I'm trying to ascertain, and I'm getting there, I think, is that there was a deliberate piped system, there was a deliberate outfall, there was a deliberate swale on property.
Yep.
Which found its way down gradient, where it just kind of petered out.
Yep.
It didn't connect to any other structure, any other outfall, didn't connect to a pond directly. It just kind of petered out, and eventually, on maybe severe storms, it found its way to the pond.
Yeah.
There was an amorphous set of drainage ditches along the railroad track that were there. They're still there, little vestiges of them. But all of the water has been basically cut off and funneled down directly to the pond. Ultimately, those drainage ditches did go to the pond anyways. Those are the ones, as well as the ones on this lot, that were considered non-jurisdictional in that RFD.
I'm sorry, I keep coming back on that. I'm understanding it.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm trying to do too with those questions. I don't have any more questions, but I will state an opinion at this point. Maybe it'll move discussion along, I think this is clearly a stormwater management swale. It's clearly needs to be maintained. It's managing a lot of water from a lot of paved surface that's around there. It's been doing it for years. And, you know, to me, that's the most important thing we do here. However, in relation to the ANRAD, we need to do what's proper to make sure that it's documented properly. I don't think we need a 50-foot setback. I don't think we need, I mean, I'd like to have a 25-foot setback, but I don't think we need a 50-foot setback from that swale. And I think it absolutely needs to be maintained to protect the property that's already there. So, no more questions for me.
Just from the 25-foot standpoint, I don't think we want to give it a 25 or a 50, because if they want to turn the swale into a detention pond or something else, I think, lost our signal, as long as they're maintaining it or for stormwater functions, they should be allowed to do so, even if that means altering the design or maybe piping some of it. I mean, we'd want to see those plans, since this currently does connect to a resource area. We'd want them to file to alter it, but I don't think we want to give it any protections, like kind of like what we did with Bear Hill. Like, you know, they need to be maintained, they need to be mowed right up to the edge. They don't have a no disturb or a no build.
Unless I'm mistaken, and I have been known to be mistaken more recently, lately, in fact. But depending on how we rule on this thing, maintenance of the swale, what I see as being essential is the maintenance of the flow of the water that the swale conveys. Depending on how we rule on this thing, they theoretically, as part of some master plan, could put a large culvert in and bury and cover it and pave over it, and still maintain the flow through it without adding any additional pavement.
Then they'd lose the treatment, though.
No, but you could put treatment
it would be
in line.
Yeah,
You could put,
beforehand or whatever. That's what I'm saying. They don't have a plan, but I think they want to be able to, at some point, design it, and I think they would, you know, be trying to meet the stormwater standards with any redesign. They wouldn't be able to just, like you said, pipe it and.
so I'm just trying to be cautious that, you know, I think maintaining the swale simply does mean maintain the flow in it and be able to have it provide whatever benefits, whatever improvement you make, continue to provide the benefits that it does, and maybe it's a net improvement, period, just by putting it in a pipe. And if that's the case, then maybe net improvement on something that doesn't serve any other purpose in the conveyance of water is something we should consider in our determination as this discussion goes on, which I think is what the original request was.
Yeah, and one of the thoughts was to give you a site plan that would show the location of the swale with a note, and the note would say something to the effect of, swale is jurisdictional under the local bylaw, and any modification of the swale is subject to review by the Conservation Commission. Don't call it a resource area, just make a note that you want to see it.
And in my mind, that's where I see it going, is that we're going to claim jurisdiction over it, but we're not going to claim prohibition of any activity near it.
Right.
You know, that's where my mind is going as this discussion's going.
And I would request that to be done under the local bylaw, not the state, just under the claim jurisdiction under the local, because that gives us more flexibility there. And quite frankly, if you put it under the state jurisdiction, it's more difficult to do
I
it.
think it's both.
We don't have anything locally jurisdictional that's different from stormwater. We completely, there isn't anything.
If it's jurisdictional, you have to call it a resource area, and makes it difficult to alter it in the future. And that's why I make that request.
I would disagree, because we've done it with Bear Hill, we did it with French Farm. We agree that they just don't meet the criteria for exemption under the Wetlands Protection Act. It doesn't mean they don't have a stormwater management function, they're just not exempt for purposes of maintenance and alteration that the new regs, or if they had been constructed post-96, would have given them. I mean, the only thing that I sort of see we could hang our hat on calling it not jurisdictional is the determination that was made some time ago. The problem I have with that determination is it doesn't really identify what swale they're talking about. It doesn't identify this particular swale in that RDA. It just says swale that runs along the railroad tracks, and at that point, the railroad tracks weren't in this location.
Yeah, I think it actually said something.
It made it sound like it was on Sutton Street or something like
yeah.
that. So I was kind of hoping, because the Wetlands Protection Act does say that, using best available evidence, if there's like any plans or approvals that this was constructed under, that the commission could use those.
Well, what he recommended to put on a plan would work for us.
Right, but I don't think there's any kind of local jurisdiction to
No.
get it. If anything, local jurisdiction gives it a 25-foot no disturb and a 50-foot no build. I think a more general,
It's more up to the discretion of the commission.
right, based on its,
Yeah,
the
'cause there's-
inability to prove that it meets the exemption provided in the Wetlands Protection Act. I actually spoke to DEP and our, to Eggleston, and both agreed that the commission could take jurisdiction over the swale.
And I'm saying take jurisdiction for the purposes of review and continuing the discussion
Right.
more specifically. I'm not saying any prohibition of doing anything to it.
Right.
By any means. Okay? I think we all know how it functions and what it does. And I think you're looking at a pretty solid commission who's been here a long time. And so when you come back in with something, you're not going to see probably many changes of the makeup of this board.
Well, there have been changes in your regulatory process locally with regard to stormwater. You have much more control under planning board as well as you folks on stormwater. So nothing's going to escape review. So that's a change. The other change that's taken place is a state jurisdictional issue where they have recognized the fact that stormwater management facilities need to be maintained, need to be upgraded, and should be, and function very narrowly in this regard. But again, under the state regulations, you've got the 5,000 square foot limitations. You've got limitations on stream impacts. Quite frankly, putting it under the state regulations would make it very difficult, and I think inappropriate, given the intent that DEP has to try to improve these resource areas, or these functional stormwater systems, so they work better, and not constrain their improvement by calling them resource areas. And if you want to, I think the commission has control and the town has control over stormwater from a couple of different directions. This one isn't going to escape treatment and compliance simply because it's too integral to the whole process and the whole project. And any expansion to the project is likely going to be in your jurisdiction anyways because of the ball field wetland area.
Under our stormwater regs, we only get jurisdiction when it comes to Concom only. If it goes to planning board and Concom, planning board has stormwater jurisdiction, right?
No, that's only for land disturbance permit, which is disturbance of an acre or more without resource area. If it had resource area, it would come to us. So we would still have.
I mean, we'll be coming, our goal is to get some lines so that
It's
we
like,
know.
we still have the yellow line, the green line.
We have still the green line. I mean,
Yeah.
our goal is to get to some lines so that we can do our master plan, and you'll see us again very soon. And then I think we'll have that conversation about, here are our ideas for how to make this our stormwater system. Swale is one part of that. If we get to working back there, obviously outside of the green line area, we're going to be doing things differently. We're going to try to find a better way to handle the stormwater that will hopefully result ultimately in improved quality and improved flow. And we're just trying to maintain our ability to accomplish that objective as we go forward. And I think, we're comfortable with the idea that, we're going to come back and review and work with you on stormwater management. We're comfortable with that.
Maybe it's just something to the effect of, you put the stormwater swale on the plan and we say, stormwater swale not exempt from review and approval by the Conservation Commission per DEP, and we cite the 10.02, with the dates 3,
Without
4,
calling
and
it a
5.
resource area.
Without calling it anything.
That would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Calling it a resource area, in my opinion, we probably want to take it off the table and not have you make a decision at all,
Yeah.
because it's such a negative thing. And it's quite counter to what the state's been trying to do. And I will say that I worked for 7 years to get that wording changed as a small subcommittee. So We worked with, the head of DEP and their Executive Office of Environmental Affairs to accomplish that. And it's a significant change, and it's a significant positive change from the standpoint of our ability as people to make improvements in the way we do things. And that's what his full intent is. And it would be counterproductive to call it a resource area at this point and not allow that to happen.
And I think what Jen just suggested as language would be something that I think would work for everyone, which is essentially say, here is this line, we know it's on the plan, we know it does something now. Everybody knows, if it's us, if it's someone else 20 years from now, they know they have to come back and deal with it appropriately. They're going to have to get it managed for stormwater, they're going to have to come meet with the Concom, with the town, and get it taken care of in a way that doesn't negatively impact either the wetlands or neighboring properties or any buildings or anything else. And that's the goal we want to get to.
Deb, you have any questions?
No questions.
Doug?
No questions.
So you're comfortable with,
Yeah, I think you need to get us a plan that shows it, and maybe we can discuss what language it is you put on the plan associated with that swale, and we approve that at the next meeting.
So everything is on the plan, and then we just approve the
Right,
plan.
and then we would just
We're
reference,
gonna improve the green,
What you said was perfectly in line with, I think, what we would think would be appropriate. If you could give that to us, we could do the plan revision, get it in front of the
Yeah,
commission
I think-
before the next meeting with the wording on it.
right. Yeah, no,
Yeah, everyone will have it
that's
in
what I
there.
was proposing.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be
Yeah.
great.
so we have a request to continue.
so move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Ned. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Good job.
Next one is, continuance, 242-1661-95 Lions Way.
This one, we received a waiver request and an alternatives analysis. The alternatives analysis just today, but the waiver request and the revised plan came in last week. So you'll see on the new plan, the new subzones are shown.
I have colored plans for the commission. I'd like to see them. As well as a copy of the paperwork.
Thank you.
And some photographs of the site. I'm not sure if you folks had an opportunity to go out.
I think we had photographs at the last hearing as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a whole.
At the last conservation hearing, Jennifer had brought up the fact that there was an ephemeral pool. And I had asked the commission to continue the meeting because I wanted to go out and take a look at the ephemeral pool. And I have it noted on the plan, it's about 25 feet from 12A. That's really the outermost edge of the vernal pool, it's not the actual size of that vernal pool. So as a result, we had to adjust the setbacks on the plan. So originally, we were able to meet the 25-foot no disturb as well as the 50-foot no structure. Now, we do not meet the 50-foot no 50-foot no disturb in the 75-foot no structure. I submitted the waiver request to the commission, as well as an alternative analysis. I can go through the alternative analysis if the commission would like, but ultimately, I'd like the commission to take into consideration not only the existing conditions, we have an existing single-family home here, that obviously met the requirements when it was first constructed back in the early 2000s. But also take into consideration that we do have an underground detention drainage system on site that is actually outlined on your plan. So in terms of restoring the 50-foot no disturb or providing extensive mitigation in the backyard area, we really are quite limited, because any of the shrubs or tree plantings in that area, the roots potentially could affect the underground drainage system. Or if the town needed to come in and maintain that system, essentially, they would destroy all of the plantings in that area as necessary to gain access to it. The addition itself, we're only proposing it 15 feet beyond the existing deck. If you look at the photographs, there's a deck on the back of the dwelling. There's also gravel beneath the dwelling. So at the maximum point, we're proposing the addition 15 feet beyond the deck. And I understand the intent of increasing the setbacks to any type of ephemeral pool habitat is to protect the ephemeral pool. But essentially, a lawn area itself provides very poor habitat for amphibians. In fact, any type of amphibians or frogs that are crossing the lawn, they're more exposed to predation, they're exposed to sunlight, they breathe through their skin. They really thrive more in a wooded type environment. And because we are limited with that drainage feature underground, it's just a tricky site in terms of what we can do and how much mitigation we can provide. So as you can see on the plan, we are proposing plantings on the plan. We're proposing that along the existing tree line. We did that to just try and stay out of that drainage easement, well, actually stay beyond the chambers, but that would enhance the habitat more than planting it through the lawn area.
Could you give us like a thumbnail summary of the alternatives analysis?
Sure. So the first alternative was, can we actually meet the setbacks, you know, the way that they are? So as you can see on their plan, where the 75-foot is, it would be essentially in this corner section of the house. The roadblocks that we run into that is the existing drainage easement is here. That, for the most part, would coincide with the side yard setback, but we would also have difficulty with the front yard setback, and the addition that we'd like to construct just cannot fit in that area. So then we thought, well, what about on the east side of the dwelling? The east side of the dwelling won't work because we have the existing drive there, we have the garage under there, and we would still require waivers from the commission if we were to put it on the east side of the dwelling. So it doesn't essentially improve anything. Another thought was, well, we could reduce the size of the addition itself. And that's really not a viable alternative for my client. They put a lot of time and effort in designing this addition. They put it in this location because it goes with the interior flow of the home. And this is essentially what they want to build in this area. The final alternative would be not construct this, leave the existing dwelling as is, and sell the house. Again, this isn't a viable alternative. My client has lived in North Andover since 2001. They're invested in the town, they're invested in the community. Their children are here and are invested as well. And another alternative was, well, maybe we can restore the entire 50-foot no disturb. But again, we run into the crossroads of the underground detention facility that's on site. We do plantings there. The roots could potentially affect the actual drainage feature itself, or if the town needed to come in and maintain this, then they would be destroying all of the plantings anyhow.
What's your side setback requirement?
30 feet.
30 feet.
Yep.
Did you consider making it longer on that, I guess I would call that the western side of the site, and shorten up the area within the 75-foot no structure zone?
So make it longer over here?
Yes.
Staying outside the 70
Yes.
foot?
Yeah.
Again, they have, you know, architectural plans of the addition. We would, as you said, gain some area, but we would still need a waiver request for the remaining area within the 75 foot.
Right. I realize this is a bump in the road that I think the plans were developed based on these
Existing.
not being
Right.
ephemeral pools, and now this is new information. I'm trying to, do something where you can get a lot of square footage and still, minimize the impact inside the 75-foot no structure zone. Anyway, that's my point. Driveway, deck. No other questions.
Okay.
No questions at
Todd?
this time.
I have no question.
The one positive with the addition going in is, you know, we are proposing to raise the deck. Obviously, there's minimal grading. There won't be any trees that need to be cut for this because it's all within that existing lawn area.
The elevation from the house toward the pool, it's downhill? Is
Yes.
that- Okay. So you can't see, there's no elevations off-site.
It's very gradual.
Then I see 108.
Once when you get to where flags A10 and A9 are, that's the outlet of the drainage system.
Okay.
And if you compare the wetland lines from when this was developed to now, it's changed dramatically. I mean, clearly the discharge of the stormwater has affected this area, maybe even formed the pool. It's impossible to say, but I mean, as far as precedent goes, in instances where houses were developed with a 50-foot no-build zone and were built under that, you have granted waivers of when vernal pools have been subsequently discovered of the 75-foot no-build, just because, as in this case, the structure already is in the 75-foot no-build. So it makes it very hard for anyone to do anything to their property when they're already not in compliance.
Any other questions?
When it says, I see in your note, Jen, that NHESP has issued a no adverse impact letter, what does that mean? Does that mean that
They're in priority habitat, so the project has to be reviewed by Natural Heritage, both under the Wetlands Protection Act and MISA. So under MISA, they got a no-take, and there's no restrictions or constraints. But MISA has exemptions for additions to single-family homes. So unless they were doing something erosion control-wise or something that was going to affect a species, sometimes there's time of year restrictions, but I don't think they were ever going to get involved in work within the existing yard of a single-family home.
Does it mean that there's no rare species in these particular?
Oh, no, the rare
ephemeral-
species are there,
Okay, yeah.
but they're not, the work within the yard is not going to affect them or their habitat.
Got it, okay. Their activity won't affect.
Right.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, if there are no more questions, a motion? You need a waiver request for us?
It's a request for the waiver for construction in the 75-foot no-build zone.
I move that we grant the waiver. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
That's uniform unilateral waiver with no mitigation and no
Yeah, they're proposing
additional
mitigation.
plantings.
Right, and
Right.
I would say that we would
That's-
condition that needs to be permanently monumented in some way.
That's not a problem, we can add that.
We have a motion for the application.
And so it would just be the closing issue.
Right.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Actually, we're gonna need it, for the record, the plans you submitted tonight, which were gonna become the record drawing, they need to be stamped.
Are they not?
They're
I
not
didn't get a, or do I have a stamped copy?
Not what got handed out tonight, no.
Okay,
Well, you
I
can
will
get
get
me-
you one.
It won't, this won't issue to the next meeting, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
The previous ones were.
Previous ones were, right.
Right, so this the new one needs to.
Um, We have, kind of put the cart before the horse. Next one is 242-1656-95 Oak Cart Way. But we also, under general business, have a filing for, under COC, and it's from an old application that they didn't do the work on. So normally we don't have, issue a new order when we have an old order that's outstanding.
Do you wanna act on the old one?
So I would recommend acting on the old order first, and then we can vote on the new one. So if you
So
look
the
at,
first is 242-1377, which was a proposal for a pool and other structures. And those were not constructed. There was some minor, was it grading work or the wall work or what?
Yeah, it's just hot tub.
Oh, that was previously there. But, so there's no work on the site that was done under that order. So it's an invalid order of conditions.
So I move that we grant the certificate of request for 242-1377 as no work commenced under the order, and therefore it's invalid.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And now we'll go back to the current order filing of 242-1656-95 Oak Cart Way.
So, that's basically all we were waiting for. I've written the order and it can issue tonight, so it would just be to close and issue.
Motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. You're all set. Next one.
You're giving me something.
No, I have my, the other table's bigger, I like to spread out.
242-1667, 700 Middleton Street.
So this one too, we were waiting for a DEP file number. Did you bring me a copy?
I didn't. The engineer who was going to stamp it, needs to be stamped by a PE, is Jim Herrick. Is that his stamp right there in the center?
I do, so, yeah, but we don't
He
have...
sent it, you need a wet stamp?
No, we just need a full-size copy for the file.
Okay, yeah, I'll get that for you.
Um.
When I stopped by the office this morning, I apologize. The engineer who was going to stamp the plan supposedly slid it under the door late on Friday. The office never got it. So I called him in a panic and just to get the plan stamped tonight for the hearing. So I will get a full-size copy for the file. I'll do that tomorrow morning.
Okay, so, yeah, and we haven't drafted this, so
Okay.
it will need to be, closed and issued, so or did I draft this? Did I draft
I think
this?
you might have.
Oh, I
yeah.
did. Oops. So we do need the full-size plan, but we do have a stamped copy. I did print an 11 by 17, just so we had one. It wasn't, it was stamped by registered
I'm a
sanitarian.
registered sanitarian working on the septic design.
Right, so
Um,
that was fine, but our bylaw regulations specifically state that for all septic systems, an engineer has to stamp the plan. So I had asked, we had gotten one,
Yeah.
but we're not sure what door it's under. There's a lot of doors that
Yeah.
are,
So I apologize for that, but I'll get a full-size plan to you tomorrow.
but I think that was pretty much it. It was discussed, and I did condition in the order that the erosion control would extend to the driveway. We
Yep.
said no stockpiling on site, and then, but those things are written into the order. So other than that, we were just needing the DEP file number and the plan.
Any questions? If not, motion to close?
I move that we close 242-1667, 700 Middleton Street and issue a decision within 21 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one is 242-1666, 240 Charles Street.
We discussed this one a long last time.
Yeah, so I don't think there was much left to discuss here either. We're just basically waiting for a DEP file number. Were there comments or? So,
Anybody, any questions?
we can scroll
No,
down to the
we hashed it
plan.
out pretty good last
Yeah,
time.
we did. Motion?
Okay, we won't even get to the plan.
No, you don't want to.
I move that we close 242-1666, 240 Charles Street and issue a decision within 21 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you. It's not that we didn't want to hear you speak.
Great work. Terrific.
Okay. We don't have any continuances, good. I'm trying. 242-1656 COC request for 242 Dale Street.
So the wetland markers did get put up despite what Heidi's recommendations say, and actually they called at the end of the day to say the erosion controls are removed. I haven't checked on that, but I would say issue the COC and I'll check it out tomorrow, and we should be good to go. The project went really well out there. It was just more buttoning up everything stabilized and et cetera.
Okay.
The
Any
minor,
questions?
the minor change was minor enough that we don't worry about it?
Oh, yeah, it was,
6 inches different setback or something?
yeah, but nothing went into the,
The other 50.
yeah,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything that was, yeah, then the hot tub was on the lower deck. The deck was proposed, I mean,
Yep, okay,
they're just,
I'm good.
Heidi's thorough in her review, so.
Yes, yes. That's good. All right, we need a motion to close.
So moved.
Move that we issue the certificate of compliance for 242, 1652, 242 Dale Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1648. Town of North Andover.
Yep, this was the new water main on Chestnut Street. It also went up Rosemont, and
Right,
they
right.
were gonna get rid of potentially, I think the pump station's still there.
The ditch from.
They said, yeah, it's abandoned, but, and all the work is, everything's, the trench is repaved, all the erosion controls are removed, everything's stabilized. So, and we have an as-built and the certificate letter from Tara McManus of Weston and Sampson.
Motion?
Move that we issue the certificate of compliance for 242, 1648 Chestnut Street, Rosemont Drive.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Next one needs to continue, and we'll discuss the enforcement
Yeah.
order.
242-1601, request to continue to the November, what's the 20th?
18th.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. 242-1620.
I don't think anyone's here from the Historical Society. You?
No?
but they are considering their options for what to do about the guardrail.
Complying,
Right, complying, but in a more historic manner.
I told them where the historic guardrail is. Well, anyways.
Okay.
I'm chairman of the North Andover Center Historical Commission, so watch out.
Well, have your proposal ready for this evening, or?
Oh, I have nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay.
Good answer.
Good idea.
So, request to continue.
Continue.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. 242-1507, modification request for 160 Gray Street.
So this was a pool proposal from some time ago, which is still valid under the Permit Extension Act. No work has started. The order has been recorded and the bond has been paid, but they would like to change the plan. So previously, right at the 50-foot, there was a retaining wall proposed. They would now like to grade down to where the no disturb wall was proposed. I think the pool is slightly larger. Yes? Yeah, so it's, oh, I'm sorry. You were sitting there ready to answer questions, but the pool is slightly larger, but still outside of the 50. So, I mean, it's completely approvable, but was somewhat of a,
So the wall that they're removing was a retaining wall, not removed, but, not, no longer including, but there's still, the proposed boulders is still the barrier to
no
the 25.
disturb, correct.
So that's, all right.
If it was a retaining wall, it'd be a problem, but are we,
Well, the pool was smaller, and so the retaining wall was well inside the 50, outside the 50, I should say.
yeah.
But now that they're gonna grade down, I mean, it's
Yeah.
an existing yard and grading.
Still works,
Grading
yeah.
is allowed. I don't
I
see
think
an
it's
issue.
minor.
We wouldn't consider that a retaining wall.
Oh, no, the boulder wall is the no
That's just the
disturb
physical
wall.
barrier,
Right,
yeah.
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 I just wanted to make sure we weren't losing the physical barrier, but we're not.
No.
Good. I'm all set. It's a
No
straight
questions.
up request.
Yeah,
No questions.
motion?
Move that we grant the modification request for 242-1507, 169 Gray Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
So we'll write something up and send that to you. Thanks.
You should have sent Fran.
Thank you.
Take care. Next one is 242-1111, PCOC request for 210 Chickering Road.
So this is another one at Kittredge. So Deb, I guess you'll have to recuse yourself.
I will. Do I have to leave?
I think we'll be done
Okay.
quickly.
Okay.
But again, we don't have a full
Do
COC.
you live there?
Yes.
Good. So you got an excuse, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she won't be voting. Again, we thought the whole subdivision was gonna get a COC at one time. It was being worked on quite proficiently, and then it ceased. So that leaves some of the owners there stuck if the lawyers want a PCOC prior to sale, and I'm guessing that's the case in this one.
This one, not only do they want one, the banker said to me that until we get it, we're not gonna approve the loan. So, and yet I've sold others in there and they've not asked for it, but in this one here, they want it. And after we finish this, I'd like to just talk to you a minute about the association. But I'd like you to approve it as presented and get us a, partial release, certificate of
So
compliance.
Heidi did, look at this one, and it's second floor in the front of the building. It's actually not even in jurisdiction.
Any questions?
Is there any bond release requested?
No,
No, it's
no,
partial.
this is just a partial.
The, I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud, but incrementally as we go on and we keep I suspect we're gonna keep issuing partials, at some point in time, whatever strength any odor condition on the record might have had goes away, because everybody's got a partial and therefore it's in compliance. So if somebody at the end is gonna be left holding the bag, one poor unit owner who just simply doesn't choose to refinance or sell until a late date, it's gonna be, he's gonna be the one, or they gonna be the one left holding the bag. what I remember was they weren't far off.
No, they had to document some information about one particular storm event, like the 10-year storm or a 5-year storm
It
or
was just how it
something.
affected Woodbridge down and back, and,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very, very minor.
And that's gone away. That problem.
That issue's got, exactly, so
And the water
documenting
problems.
it's pretty straightforward, I would
Yeah,
think.
and the water problem.
They just, someone needs to do it. And
Well,
maybe,
I want to bring that up afterwards, you know, I'd like the motion to pass, and then I'll talk to you about
sure.
where I'm at.
Okay. Any more questions about this PCOC? If not, a motion to close.
To issue the
Issue.
PCOC.
Move the issue of partial certificate required compliance with 242-1111, specific only to unit number 206.
206A it should be.
206A?
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
The reason is that I talked to the management company about this because this came up. And my feeling is the same thing, Joe, that you're saying, is every time they come in, it's $200. Do you still have money in a bond in this?
Yes.
We do have, and again, is it Menacucci that I need to talk to get him to finalize this? And my feeling is, from the association's point of view, that the association should go to them, because it's costing each individual $200 each time that it comes up. And in particular, from what you're telling me, it's basically clear that this thing is pretty much in compliance except for some paperwork.
I'm stopping short of saying that, George. I'm saying, from my recollection, is they were damn close. There's only a couple of little hurdles that need to clear, and I think that
And I
they're
think
clear.
that association should take it themselves through the board to save them a lot of money going forward.
Great strategy.
And I did tell Linda that I would write to her an email, Linda's the management company, explaining how I had to do this time and how we can get it through so in the future, that it isn't a big,
And I
that
can
it
look,
gets done.
you know, if someone wants to contact me, I can look through the file. It's been a couple years, but we documented there was mitigation, we did all kinds of, work. I think they even cleaned the stormwater system, so, I mean,
They were there.
See, there is a guy who's on the board who is an attorney, and I will check with him and make sure that he takes care of that.
okay. We'll try to get it done.
Pitch in or $200 too.
Well, and that's what it's costing each
Yeah.
individual.
Okay, I will check with them.
Any chance I can pick this up tomorrow?
You can,
I already filled out paperwork for your end too.
no, it's Donna's end of the paperwork, so,
I gave it to her all filled out.
okay.
Great, thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
you.
You almost put me behind schedule.
Oh, yeah, that's why I gave you 2
Yeah.
more minutes.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the bylaw reg revisions are on Lisa Eggleston's radar. She has, she has them set, she plans to work on them. We just have to.
Give her some,
It seems
No,
like
we gave her the guidance. I think we keep handing her projects instead of, giving her time to work on the regs. So she just finished with review of a big planning board project. So I will, provided that life slows down a little bit for us as well, we'll get to her between now and the next meeting. So if we could just maybe continue to December 4th. Like I said, maybe for Christmas we can have some new regs.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it'll be a nice Christmas.
So it
Yes.
sounds like the steps are, she reviews and proposes some changes,
Well, she had
and Joe and
proposed
Doug.
massive changes. And when Joe and I looked at that document, the change to the regs was like taking everything from the stormwater bylaw and trying to make it consistent with our regs. And we said, rather than pull all of those regs into our regs,
Reference them.
why not just reference? And so she was gonna look into and I actually showed her where that had been done in some other towns, and so she was gonna try to draft something similar that would work for us.
and
that's
not rehash it, the whole thing. When you write bylaws or regulations, you always want to make it typically by reference if there's a parent document. Because if you simply put the same verbiage in each document, this one changes, now you've got to go back and change your bylaw or change your reg. So if you simply reference it and you agree with any of the other changes, they simply get annexed in.
Doug mentioned that stuff a long
Yeah,
time
and
ago.
Doug had
Yes.
reviewed it as well, and I think that's when we had the public meeting about it last time, that's kind of where we were left.
Yeah.
And Lisa has the funds and the budget and everything to do it, we just have to get it done. So if you could continue to December 4th,
We're getting close, almost the third.
right, the 4th, Donna? December 2nd? When's the December
Are you
meeting?
seconding a motion, or are you giving us a date?
I'm giving you a date.
Second of December.
December 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
Rather than
To the
Joe.
second.
We have 2 seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
All right, I think we have a member of the Historic Commission here, if you'd like
We
to
circle back?
Okay.
reopen that hearing.
Reopen,
No,
we ran out of time, it's 8:30 already. I know, well, Mr. Sharenda took up the extra 2 minutes.
another meeting.
All right, 242-1620.
Enforcement on again, that's,
No,
We'll come back to it?
179 is good.
oh, we're back on that one, okay.
This is the guardrail.
Gotcha.
Sorry I'm late. I told Stan I had to go to another meeting first. And I stayed almost, but catching my breath. Anyway, he asked me to come tonight regarding the guardrail and the guardrail at the barn when they did the replacement of the wall. Now, I'm concerned with the wall also. I mean, and again, when I saw the request of the board to put in a guardrail, I did not have a problem with it until the contractor said it was $6,500. At the time, we were tight with funds, and now with the third CPA funding that we're probably using the balance of the funds at the headquarters building, $6,500 was an awful lot for a guardrail, even though I'm concerned, as you were, that the safety of people and the vehicles from going over the wall. But again, as an architect and as the engineers and as the Historical Society director, I am concerned. And that's why we put 2-ton boulders there. And also we have the 8x8 wheel stop. I feel confident that that is the safety things that you would need. Guardrails typically will not stop a vehicle from going through it. But, you know, if we needed more protection and someone asked to put more 2-ton boulders there, I would. They're there. They just have to be taken up from someplace on the other side of the wall. But we can put more boulders there if you really have an issue with vehicles and a small 50-foot wide area of stone where a car might get enough speed to go over the 8x8 wheel stops, plus the boulders that we have put there. And the wall is a 4-foot high wall that is about 9 feet away. There's nothing that requires us to do a guardrail. There's no sidewalks there. There's nothing there. But I am concerned with you that if there is a safety issue, let's solve it. But I don't see a safety issue. And I don't have the $6,500 unless we go back to CPA, which may not allow a guardrail because this was not for the parking lot. This was the replacement of the stone wall and the foundation. If I had $6,500, I'd go back into the barn and start replacing some of the rotten floorboards and sills that were brought out to me when they were underneath fixing the foundation. So can we work something else out? The Bradstreet School came down and the contractor told me that there was some granite steps and some longer granite, you can call them curbs, but they're not. They're like 12 by 12 pieces of granite, 6 feet long. They're at a whatever you call it, junkyard, storage yard, whatever they have, and for $1,000 I can probably put a few of them in there, but I can't see how more protection that would be necessary there. I'm open for suggestions anyway.
Joe?
My recollection is, first of all, as a Conservation Commission, we're not, it sounds awful, but we're not necessarily concerned about vehicle safety or parking. vulnerabilities or anything of the sort. I think we're looking at protection of the wetlands and the resource areas themselves. And I thought the guardrail served a purpose of a physical barrier to the resource area, and the slope being what it was just, we typically require a physical barrier.
Joe, there's a 4-foot wall there, 9 feet away, that goes around the entire
Higher 4-foot low.
4-foot drop.
4-foot drop. But like in any yard, we require a physical barrier. Now, my recollection is that that's what the purpose was. We talked about a fence, and obviously we weren't gonna think of, none of us wanted to have a fence out there. So I thought the compromise was to come up with this rustic-looking physical barrier of a guardrail and
The one they built at McAvoy Park.
like that, yeah. It never, we hate to say it, we were never really looking at it from a safety perspective. It was the physical barrier. So snow wouldn't get pushed over, more readily, and of course, boulders won't do that either. But to give that visual separation and something to place placards on the resource area was right behind it. But that's what I seem to remember, and I could be, maybe mistaken, but I don't think so.
You're right on target.
That's all I had.
Jack?
I have no comments.
That's what the curb would do. I mean, pushing snow through a guardrail or over a curb or over boulders.
That would get pushed over, and I do it for a living.
Yeah.
Curbing doesn't stop snow. You push up to the curb and you pick up your plow, you push it the rest. It was, normally I'm a resident, we've made them build 2-foot stone walls, hundreds of feet. And it's cost inhibitive for them too. I mean,
That's what I was trying to say, and if I didn't say, if I stopped short, is the guardrail we thought was a relaxation of what was typically required.
Right.
We were coming in with something less stringent, recognizing that we wanted it to look somewhat rustic, and at the same token, provide the barrier we needed, something that a placard could be mounted on.
plus it's calling it a guardrail, such a, people think about it as a steel guardrail like you see on the highways. It would, there's many different types of aesthetic that would fit right into a rustic setting as a historical thing, like, those wooden ones, they're pretty rugged.
And it wasn't long, right?
No, I don't think it's long. I don't have a plan here. What's it, about 100 feet, maybe 150 feet?
Oh.
No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 75 feet. No, 90 feet. 90 feet.
So for sake of argument, 100 feet, that 6,500 seems pretty high, but.
I thought so too. That's why.
That's what I'm driving at. It's like $60 a foot, right?
That's a lot of money.
At the time, I sent Jennifer a memo that says I was open. It's not my money. It's the Historical Society's money. They had CPA funds. It was available, so I was all for it. So what happens is I figured you guys wanted a wood barrier, the ones you see in some decorative guardrails, but those needed footings. This is just soft stuff and go over. So when the price came back, I wrote Jennifer a memo that says it's impossible to put a guardrail there. That's not what the funds were given us for. It was to replace an historical wall and fix a foundation of an existing barn. The minute we start getting into guardrails and fencing and everything else like that for beautification, that probably would have got rejected in the house, and the Historical Society may have had to pay for it by themselves, and they don't have any money, period. Same thing with the headquarters. We had to redesign the entire slope out there to conform with the CPA requirements, and we ran out of money. I'm trying to find a solution that does what you're looking for.
Yeah, like I said,
I thought it was safety, to tell you the truth. I didn't,
It might
This is
provide that secondary purpose, but that wasn't our driving purpose.
but the wall is still 9 feet away. The barrier's there, the stones are there. I can put more. The next budget we have, our own budget, we're gonna put shrubs in there to try to create a barrier for kids not to go down there. But
As
What
far as
was there
snow-
before the parking lot was built?
It was graded down. It was
It just
a
sloped
natural
down?
slope with trees. They removed
Well,
trees.
actually, it was a retaining wall that crumbled and fell apart, and then they started.
Well, the
to-
retaining wall
Yeah.
stopped at the Parson
There was-
barn, though. The
there was
wall
some-
didn't extend
And
past
there were
very
some
far.
large trees that they had to cut down.
There were some large
Couple
trees.
behind the barn.
And the slope was nowhere near that kind of drop. It just gradually went off.
I mean, speaking as a citizen, the guardrail works better. I mean, from a safety standpoint, in every way, I think. I mean, I would get other prices. I think.
Or post and rail? I mean, we had discussed.
That's what I thought we were talking about. Oh, you mean post and roll fence?
Right.
Well, that would serve our purpose.
One of the members suggested we have some cast iron posts and we put chains across them. I mean, at least that would look like it was part of the post and rail original barn area. But,
Aesthetics, if you're talking about historical aesthetics, I don't think that's gonna be with chain link.
we have,
A
no, no.
chain.
Wouldn't be
I mean, chain, I
wouldn't
mean,
be
supposed
consistent.
chain, it wouldn't.
I really think the
Seaport,
old
maybe.
Brad Street granite pieces might fit in better.
How many feet do you think?
I haven't seen them. I was just told today, because I was told to come to a meeting tonight, and I was gonna have,
It's just a better,
It's just
better
gonna-
than the 8x8 curb wheel stops. Right?
they
But
may
if it
be
doesn't
12,
have
they
any-
may
if it
be
doesn't
12
have any-
inches
if there's
high.
no elevation, if there's no elevation, then it's just gonna get pushed
See,
over.
this is a historic place. I mean, people, tourists go there to tour the,
Eventually they will, when we restore the place. It has some nice things inside that are getting ruined.
so there's a lot of foot traffic. I think the guardrail just does work better. I mean, people won't walk up to that wall and not want to fall off.
4 feet.
You can still break an ankle.
So if it's 4 feet high, anything over 3 feet, you gotta have if people are gonna walk there, you don't have a walkway there.
No, you don't.
No.
There's
So,
no, there's no.
I don't
there's
think
no-
you would be required by the building code to have a fence there.
Correct. Correct. I mean, I wouldn't violate the codes there, but as far as I know, there's no safety codes violated there, so.
Unfortunately, based on consistency of the commission, we don't base decisions on financial hardships.
What's the what's the commission's purpose for this guardrail again? Just to clarify it in my own mind.
Well, when we have any
For
work,
what purpose specifically?
separate this 25-foot no disturb.
Well, it's
and-
not the 25, but to.
Is it
it
not
was
the
more to
25?
No,
No,
but
no,
it's.
no,
Well,
but this is
long-
not anywhere
it's-
near that, is
It's
it?
not in.
No.
No, so
But it
it's,
was
that's
to
not
stop
that
from-
purpose.
Stop from basically anything going over the wall. And already the landscaper was dumping over the wall. When we went out to check, Heidi and I had to have them clean it up.
We're not sure who's landscaper.
Well-
The barn doesn't have a landscaper.
Someone's mowing the lawn out there.
I think it could be a neighbor.
Could be a trespasser,
Well,
yeah.
it could be, you have a resident living in the house who mows the lawn. There were 2 Christmas trees and, yard waste over the wall. So we have nothing, there's nothing to put markers
The
on.
little fence is not gonna, you could
Yeah.
put markers on the stones, but the thing is that,
Some of those stones are
If somebody's gonna
definitely
di-
not 2 tons. They're-
Yeah, it looks more like
That
2
thing is you could
tons
put-
of
you could
stones
put
than
larger
2
stones
ton
in.
stones.
We can do that.
if you could replace these with larger ones, that obviously if, a car isn't gonna
And closer together, perhaps.
closer
We have
together. yeah.
large boulder walls as permanent monumentation before, but they've been large boulders, not stones that, a couple people could move.
Well, some of these stones, a couple of people aren't
Or a
gonna
plow.
move. Plow can move them, yeah. But you could put some larger stones in that probably basically touch one another and go right along. So it looks like a,
That would be $1,000 budget. That's something. I know you don't want to hear it, but you still got to find the funds. Anyway.
So what's before us? This request for certificate of compliance, right? And is the order expired?
No, it's a,
But the work's complete, so they're just trying to do the diligent thing and close it
well,
out.
and contractor posted the bond and he wants his bond back.
And they're not in compliance because the order specified a guardrail.
guardrail.
Okay, so there's the issue. How much is the bond?
$1,500? 1,500.
About 6,500, huh?
And it's the contractor's money.
It's the contractor's money.
Just in my, like I said, I just, it's the condition. We wanted more than we normally have before. We bent with the guardrail. You know, the granite pieces of granite are just no different than those timbers aren't gonna last a year.
You know, if they're gonna replace those, what's this,
You know what?
There's no
if
occupancy in the
this
building.
curbing, wooden curbing,
That's gonna
if they're gonna replace that with granite curbing,
No, I was leaving that there. I was gonna put the granite behind it and stand it up.
There's no purpose.
If you go down to the compost site, I mean, the DPW is just like making little sculpture benches out of waste granite and granite stubs. I mean, you could string out vertical pieces and lay some granite atop it, make it look like a guardrail and give it some substance and give it some verticality. And do it, you know, I suspect for materials for darn near nothing. I'm not giving away DPW material, but, you know, I happen to notice when I go down to compost, I see that stuff down there as a surplus in a pile.
They offer it.
There's a possibility you could turn it into a community project for close to the donut.
And I'd get a contribution of someone to get his bond money back to ship us back.
So, I mean, there are some other alternatives.
That's what I'm
Materials,
looking
like-
for something.
But no, if a guardrail has posts and horizontal element to it, I mean, the same thing out of surplus granite, you know, that I think the town might have stockpiled. It's worth asking the question.
I like the idea with the boulders, that I can stagger the boulders, that almost like this, so they don't look like a barrier like this. They have a staggered, and I planned on in the springtime putting shrubs out there. There's no money for it right now, but put shrubs in front of the boulders, trying to hide a little bit of it. I think what you're looking for is some sort of barrier. Now it's not, you're not asking for vehicle protection, you're asking for debris protection or
well,
evaders.
even the boulders there, if somebody purposely wants to dump something over there, they're gonna do it. You know, if landscaper's working there, or somebody's volunteering to cut the grass in this area for you, and they're taking the remnants of it, they're dumping it, they'll throw it over out of sight.
There was some volunteers on the other side on the garden area.
That could very well
I
be
think
what they're doing.
they need to come up with a plan and come back to us with it. So if whatever material you can find and what you're gonna do with it, you need to propose it to us, because I think we could sit here and sort of hypothesize for a while, but probably not a good use of time.
He gave suggestions and,
Well, my suggestion is the boulders. They seem to be the easiest and most available.
Well, I think we want to know something about size and placement and, you know, what it's going to look like on the plan.
right, so we need to continue, because like I said,
It's all hypothetical until we have something
exactly.
concrete to look
Some
at.
people interpret a boulder, and some people interpret a boulder with two different boulders.
All right, but for my representation to the society, we are looking not for safety. That's what I was led to believe. It's not a safety issue now. It is another issue.
Well, I think the commission doesn't want, you know, anything in the wetland. They don't want cars going over, they don't want plows plowing snow over, they don't want people falling off. I mean, they don't want stuff in the wetland. And, you know, with a couple rocks there, I think the potential for the rocks to wind up in the wetland if the area is plowed, or, you know, cars to dry, I mean,
If I had a guardrail there, that would be the first to disappear if what you say is going to happen.
Well, I don't think so. I think those.
I mean, anybody who's plowing the lot is not gonna
And
purposely
I would also
plow
look
over
at
the fence.
a different fencing contractor, because that seems awful expensive for.
I don't know what the spec is. At first I said, boy, oh boy, that's like, you know, $50, $70 a foot. And the reality is if they spec'd out you know, timber grade material out of, you know, Doug fir, it's gonna be all of that. And it might be the good price for a too robust spec. So I'm not gonna get into the value of that, but, you know,
Well, okay,
Well, it's an extra to the contractor. You come to the contract, and the contractor's got the client over a barrel.
Sounds like a point.
So, that's not uncommon for contractors to do that.
all right,
So get another contractor,
there you go.
somebody else to bid on it.
All right, so we're gonna continue to November.
No, November 18th.
18th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you.
So the next matter is the enforcement order that we issued to Katuitt Street. They did get in touch with me. They have 4 of the 6 homeowners signed. Jackie, Joe, you're recused on this.
I am.
They need to get those last 2 homeowners, one of whom is away. They've drafted an O&M plan and a homeowners association contract, and they do still have some work to do on the detention pond. So they've asked, we gave them a deadline of November 1st. They did contact us and have asked if we would extend that deadline to December 1st.
hell of a vacation.
Well, I think there's still work to be done on the detention pond too, and it was slow getting started, but I think now that that we did issue the enforcement order to both developers and the homeowners on the street, so. And there is a desire to develop the lot that's on Layden, which also has them wanting to get this resolved. So I don't think anybody's dragging their feet on purpose. I do think they're trying to get it done.
Okay, so we have a motion to,
Extend to December 1st?
yes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
No, one
Jack.
recusal.
And one abstention.
Okay. So,
Okay, decision time.
decision time. Find my decisions.
Yeah, they're inside.
Yeah.
Okay, which one are we doing first?
Looks like you got Old Cartway.
Old
first, I
Cartway
believe.
first. So, highlights of this one are the applicant, number 36, the applicant is required to allow the 25-foot no disturbance zone to re-vegetate naturally. No disturbance of native vegetation is permitted in this zone. He had done some clearing in there previously. So that goes, I have $2,000 bond, if that's acceptable to you. 51 is the wetlands, saying that it can be placed on existing trees or mounted on pressure-treated posts in areas where he had previously cleared. There will be the wall at the 50, and then it would go down, and the post would be at the 25. So then the continuing conditions would be the resource area markers, and then the standard, prohibitions on herbicides and dumping, et cetera.
The, on 53, you have the pre-construction thing. You asking, is the contractor gonna be present when you do the pre-construction? Are you requiring that?
Yeah, it says the NSC representative, the contractor, the monitor, and the applicant
Okay.
in 53.
Oh, okay, I stopped reading. Okay.
That's a standard one. I don't mess with that one typically.
Sometimes communication applications will come.
Yep, no, I will definitely be at that pre-construction.
Any questions?
No.
Motion?
I move that we issue the order of conditions for 242-1656 95 Old Cartway as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. And the other decision is 242-1667.
So this one had some special conditions regarding the 44, the installation of erosion control. We specified that the sock be backed by trench siltation fence because it was very close to wetlands. And it says, specifically states that it's added to, that erosion control be added to extend the erosion control line to the driveway. That was one of the conditions the commission asked for. Bond is $1,500. There, 59, there's no allowance for stockpiling on the site because there is no place to stockpile on the site. And they had specified in their narrative that they would not be stockpiling. 60 is construction access shall be over the paved driveway. Not that there's really any place else to go. And then your typical standard post-construction conditions.
Jen, go back to 59?
Mm-hmm.
You said the site was so congested, there is no place to stockpile?
Correct.
But 59 is kind of written in a way that it prohibits within 100 feet. It kind of implies that
The
there...
whole site is within 100 feet.
Right, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I'm saying is kind of, I know it's a standard,
Just say no stockpiling on site, to be
given
clear.
yeah.
We only have jurisdiction within 100 feet, right?
Yeah.
But that's written in a way that all stockpile material shall be stored within the property on the erosion control as shown on hearing reference plans. The reality is it's kind of misleading. It's going to cause you to look for something on the plans and maybe imply that.
Okay, so I'll eliminate that part of it. And
Yeah.
just-
Yep.
Okay.
In the interest of clarity.
Yep.
Any more questions? Motion?
No. I move that we issue the order of conditions for 242-1667 700 Middleton Street as drafted and amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
And the second was just a request to, Donna had forgotten to give you Foxford Street, the water line at the last meeting, so that needs to be signed tonight. We can't forget because they want to start work like tomorrow. And then just sort of a verbal reminder, I sent it out to everyone, and I know a lot of you have responded, but DPW, Planning, Conservation, and the new Harbor Master, sorry, Deb, are sponsoring lake cleanup on Saturday from 8 to 1. If anyone's around to help out, I will be there, and we will be cleaning up around the lake, including lots of local entities, including Edgewood, the Country Club, Rolling Ridge. I don't want to leave anybody out, but everybody's on board and helping.
I'd rather be doing that, but I got roped into decorating for a dance.
Oh, yeah. And some people won't be helping out. But anyway,
I will not be able to go. I'll be in Boston.
that is okay. I will be
Good thing you don't have
representing
an ass.
anyone who isn't there.
Where
from this
are people
commission.
meeting?
Stevens Pond, so everyone's meeting
At the beach?
at the
Right
beach.
there.
Yeah, and there'll be coffee and donuts and
Wow, sounds like fun.
big day. DPW supplying trash bags and picking up trash. There'll be a police detail for doing work along 133. We have people in boats.
Wow.
Merrimack College is having their volunteer day, so they'll be supplying volunteers as well. We have some
Mike, you
volunteers
bring
from
your boats
the high school, from the environmental club.
Any leads on the malicious destruction of kiosks?
It was, yes, it was an accident, and there is insurance. It was reported to the police, and there will be insurance money to
Nice. Where was this?
Mazarenko
Mazarenko.
Farm kiosk was
Crashed it.
destroyed. So since we're live, and we should probably adjourn.
Yeah, we should have adjourned before. John Thorne was feeding us this stuff. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous.